on earth are you doing, John?
I'm woodworking. What does it look like? This is woodwork. This is the reality.
This is all we do.
We stand here like this all day going, oh, look at all this glue
It's
that I
either
should have
that
wiped off.
or with a piece of sandpaper.
Yeah.
Hours and hours.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tiny Workshop. I'm John Madden.
Patrick Holcomb.
And as you can see, we have here the results of last week's glue-up lamination. So anyway, how's your week been?
Pretty good. I got asked to audition for The Voice. I said no.
Yeah. You don't want to be a pop star?
I don't want to be a singer.
I want to be a woodworker. Yeah, that's where that money is. Okay, so what are we going to talk about on the show tonight?
Looks like you've got a bunch of glue on there, so we've got to keep getting that off.
Yeah.
Want to get these things flat?
Okay, so we do a bit of machining. I see we've got a 13-inch Sherwood benchtop thicknesser here. So we'll be able to give that a whirl to clean up these laminations for the top. I'm going to work on a bit of leg joinery, and you're going to be doing drilling, yeah?
Yeah, I want to put some holes in the timber and show you how to get them really nice and straight, so that, you know, a lot of this is getting bolted together.
Yeah, of course. If you go to the plans, and thank you for the 700,000 people who requested copies of the plans. They're available. Just email us at tinyworkshop@timbecon.com.au.
Correct.
If you like a set of plans, it shows you where the bolt holes go and everything like that. So check it out. And after that, I'm going to make a tool tray because as part of the bench design, we've got a little tool tray.
Excellent.
So I'm going to use tape and glue to glue it together. It's going to be cool.
Can't wait. All right.
All right, so I've been picking this glue off using a chisel. Now I've been here for 16 hours now, and I've managed to clear up this area quite nicely with my nice Swiss chisel. Yours is very flat. How did you get it so
look,
flat?
I wanted to speed up a little bit, and mine was as gluey as this, and I hit it pretty hard with a belt sander. And I'm not trying to take it right back to timber. I just want to knock the high points of the glue off so that they're not grinding on the plate of the thicknesser here. So
it'll end up being like Arizona.
Yeah, I mean, really, technically, you shouldn't be using a thicknesser unless you have one truly flat surface. So having this belt sanded is enough. And in fact, I broke the belt.
My belt.
John's belt. And then I've just got a really beat up old plane that I use specifically for this. The sole is all messed up. I just kind of sharpen it really quickly. But you can use that to knock any high points off really quickly. So, you know, that's another technique. You wouldn't want to use a nice plane to do this because it would just get so gummed up with all the glue.
I did contemplate bringing my Veritas number 7 out to do this, but no, I won't do that. If you don't own a belt sander or a hand plane suitable for this job, you can just use the chisel. It's fine on smaller projects, but when you're doing this amount of surface area, belt sander is probably the way to go.
For sure. I use my random orbital most of the time, but it gets clogged up pretty quick. But it's just what you got to do.
What else you got there?
So one other technique, if you don't have a thicknesser at all, it is fairly common for people to use a router sled to thickness this kind of stuff. And the way that works is you get a box that you generally build yourself. You put it on rails that sit either side of your workpiece and that lifts this box up a little bit. And those rails act as your reference. So they have to be flat and they have to be, you know, coplanar. They have to be flat as each other. And then you can toss your router into the jig, slide it back and forth, and take material off bit by bit. And then you move your jig along, take the next stripe off, move your jig along, and you use a big whopping router bit like this, which is a
flattening
bit. So that you can take wide passes. So
this is really interesting. We should actually, if there's anyone out there who'd like to see us demonstrate, or see Patrick demonstrate that, just let us know. Not tonight, maybe next time. But
I believe
that's really cool.
Is a video demonstrating this. I built this for a Timbecon video, so just search for that if you're on the Timbecon YouTube. But yeah, I'd be happy to mess around with that. It's great for slabs that are too wide for a thicknesser. There's all kinds of stuff you can't put through a thicknesser.
Do you use that for doing detail as well, like inlaying and things?
I never have, but you could do it for getting a really straight line or like cleaning up, maybe giving yourself a reference line that you could then trim the ends, potentially.
Sure.
So.
It certainly is a lot better than my chisel. Is there anything else you got there, or are we going to go with the thicknesser?
Those that between the hand plane, I mean, look, you could do this with a hand plane. It would be really slow. But those are my methods that I can think of.
Now look, if you're really lazy, woodworking's a bit like sailing in the sense that if you've got a mate who's got a really great boat or has a really great workshop, you can go around and use his to get some of this work done. But tonight, we're going to run it through this little baby right here. That can stay there for a moment.
Excellent.
Well, good to go?
Yeah, I'm going to chuck some muffs on. So like I said, I've basically flattened this side, and then I ran this side through the thicknesser already, so I've taken a mill off that. Now I'm going to use this as my reference, flip it over,
turn the dust collector on,
and do a couple passes on this top side.
You ready?
I'm good.
Well, that was entertaining, yeah. That's really effective for a small machine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, we made these in halves so that we could pass it through this machine specifically.
Good point. So let's lay these two together. So if you're not understanding why our benchtop is in two parts, it's exactly for that reason. Because that means we can pass it through and get it flat, and then we do a second glue up where we bring the whole piece together. And if we do our job well, get this flat nice and square, we'll have a benchtop that's flat and large within the capacity of smaller machines.
And obviously, we want to make sure that these are the same thickness. So I don't want to do too much work on this, too many more passes until we get this done as well. But you don't need to see all of that. It's pretty much a repeat of what we just did.
The tricky bit's going to be getting the ends grain cut.
Yeah, I'm sure we can think of some clever ways of doing that.
But I saw that piece you made, that Oregon table that you put in the wood review exhibition.
Yeah.
And that, like, it's a chunky piece of Oregon like this. If anyone's going to get the edge done right, it's going to be you, I'd say, Patrick.
Yeah, I've done deeper pieces than this, but yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's our little demonstration on flattening the top. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk about joinery and drilling and other stuff like that, and get into starting to assemble this bench. Talk to you soon. Hello, welcome to this Tiny Workshop Tiny Tips segment. Today I'd like to talk about tape. Now, you're all probably pretty familiar with it. It has a very broad range of applications, and if you're someone who hasn't started using tape in your woodworking, then it's time to change. Now, in very general terms, there's two types of tape that you should consider. There's this white, yellowy masking tape stuff that you see here, and there's blue tape, which is sometimes known as like a painter's tape. Now, if you've got this yellow tape, throw it away because it's completely useless. The resins that are on that surface are way too sticky for woodworking. If you stick it on something, it'll mar that surface. It'll leave a residue on the surface, so you don't want to touch it. And if you buy it from some of those hardware shops, you'll find often it sticks itself together and it's basically a waste of money. Spend the extra money and get blue tape. Okay, so here's a couple of things you can use your blue tape for. Remember the other night on Tiny Workshop when I glued up our benchtop section? Look at that, there's marks on this steel clamp from the glue seepage. Get yourself a piece of tape. Try to have the end prepared in advance so you don't stand here looking like an idiot. Just run it along the edge like so. Protects the surface from glue and other residue. And at the end of that job, you can just simply peel that off and toss it away. No big deal. Another really great use for tape is to help with joinery. We've got this mitered frame here. If I put those two sections end to end like that, add a bit of tape, turn it over and put a little bit of glue in there, I can simply join that together like so. If I don't have a clamp handy, just use the tape itself to join that element together. Say you've got to do a little repair. Imagine this piece of cardboard's a little patch. Put your glue down there on the surface, put your little patch in position, bit of tape. The tape will hold that patch in position until you can apply a clamp. Say you're making a complicated job and you want to mark on all these pieces of wood exactly what component they are, rather than riding straight on the timber, because you're going to have to sand that out again later. Bit of tape, whack it on there, write the component's name. When you're coming to finishing the job, you can simply remove it, and because it's blue tape, there's no residue on the surface. There's a whole bunch of other things you can use tape for as well. You can use it to help join sections of veneer together, put along the back of a saw cut so it doesn't tear out when you're sawing, or if your lunch doesn't turn up in time, you can eat it. Thanks for watching this Tiny Workshop, Tiny Tips episode. See you soon. Okay, we're back. We're back on air. You've had a wardrobe change.
Yeah, I did. My microphone was cutting in and out. Sorry about that. So apparently can't wear it on a t-shirt, hence my shirt.
It's a nice shirt. So we're back here now in the Tiny Workshop. I'm going to start marking out the joinery for the leg rail. So I've got a leg section here. I glued these up during the week, 70 by 70 laminated, and I've planed them up and made them nice. All the information for the benches in the drawings, by the way. So I'm going to start marking this out. What are you going to do?
So I've got what will be one of the top rails here, and that's going to be intersecting with John's join, his half lap joint. And those joins are going to be held together with some 10mm or 12mm bolts. And I want to make sure that those holes are drilled perfectly straight so that it looks neat and so the bolts are in the right location. The way I'm going to do that is I am going to use one of these Milescraft drilling jigs, which allows you to drill straight up and down. The other way you could do it is if you had a drill press, but if you don't have a drill press, this is cheaper.
Well, we actually have it. I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? We actually have a drill press, but we've decided not to use that because that would be a little bit too easy. So, yeah.
I think another way that you could potentially do this is if you can get one hole straight, you can use that as a guide for your other ones. So you could eyeball it or have a friend help you. If you hold a square up, make sure that it is straight up and down. You could mark that with a point where the exit should be, and you could check that. You know, if you had one straight hole, you could use it as a guide, but I'm going to be using this. So like I said, this is a top rail. I've marked out the location for my two bolts. I have, because this is intersecting with the leg, which is 70mm, I want the center of that, which is 35, and all of this is on the plans, and then I've gone in 20mm from each side. So those are the points where I want those holes to be. I'm going to clamp this down. I'm going to clamp this thing on there, drill a hole.
Drilling a hole. Because, yeah, getting that hole really, really straight is very important. Otherwise it can go, you know, wayward, and, you know, you're halfway to China on the other side of your job, and you don't want that. When you do this drill, you're only drilling into one part of wood. What's going to happen when you actually come to the job?
Yeah, so I'm only drilling this rail, and then once we soft join this once the half lap is done.
Mate, these joins will be hard and tight, mate, I can tell you right now.
Once we put them together, we can use this hole in the rail to drill the hole in the leg. And if you back that up with a piece of pine or something, you'll stop that drill bit blowing out on the backside.
Okay.
Keep all your holes nice and clean.
So that's the way, if you've got to drill a 100mm hole effectively, you can do it in 2 parts, a bit like the way we're doing the top. Drill the first section, use the first section as the guide, but make sure you put a block on the backside, otherwise you'll tear out and that just looks amateurish. So yeah. Now this is an interesting little duver that we have here. I won't go into the explanation of what a duver is. I do have a backstory on that, but another time. We sell a lot of these here at Timbecon. They're not really designed for drilling for oil or cutting through the crust of the earth or anything like that. They're kind of more for detail work like what Patrick is doing. Though they do take a lot of beating around, but they're not designed for hammer drills and big Forstner bits. Into something like red gum and you're in a big hurry because the kettle's on, no, not advisable. Detailed work like this, perfect.
I actually use them pretty frequently to put clean, straight holes in the center of a large panel where I can't get my drill press. So if I wanted to do pegboard or something like that where I want a clean hole in the center of a piece of plywood. All right, I'm gonna drill. Just make sure that's all locked in. Probably not.
It's a bit hard to do this and talk at the same time, I can tell you.
Well, people can just watch you.
You're not clashing, yeah. So it's like a little mini portable drill press.
Mini drill press.
What will they think of next? This is what's great what you've done here because you've added a base plate to it. I did a job a while ago where I cut a large slot through the middle of a plywood desk in order for the cables to come through.
Yep.
And I was trying to freehand it, forget it. If you want to get a really steady job, attach the drill jig to a piece of plywood or a piece of MDF or whatever. What do you got here? It's
yeah, that's right. I did this for that job I was talking about where I had to drill some holes in some ply, and that's why this is here, so I can clamp it down.
Yeah. Great applications, not just for furniture. If you're doing any kind of renovation and you need to drill into walls, etc., looks great.
So that's my first hole. The second one is going to be done in exactly the same way.
Okay, so here in the limited amount of time that I've had available, I've just marked out those 2 lines there across the top. So that's across the top rail.
Yes, it is.
So this drilled piece of wood here is going to fit there. Once I cut like I think it's a 20mm, what's that joint called?
Half lap.
Half lap, yeah. Into there, with a hard edge clashing up on the rail. Bolt this together in 2 positions on either section. And because you've got a bolt, but also because the timber is riding on that hard edge of the joint, that is going to be rock solid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even though it's kind of quite discreet, this bench, the intersection of the hard joints on the hard edges gives it that rigidity.
I mean, if you're really lazy, you could do this without the half laps, but you'd lack a lot of strength doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, the bolts, like John said, they're holding the 2 pieces of timber together, but they're not stopping them skewing as much as a good hard join will.
Yeah, and in theory, if you had to sneak this into your bedroom or a second room of the house where you can set up a little tiny workshop of your own, you could in theory like pull this apart and ship it in piece by piece over consecutive days and your wife won't even notice. So I think that's our little drilling demonstration, a bit of joinery.
If you want a bit more detail on this half-lap cutting process,
Yeah.
and you haven't watched the previous episodes, we kind of went through that, which is why we're not fully repeating it now.
Yeah.
So watch those.
Okay, excellent. Right, we're going to take another short break and we're going to come back and I'm going to attempt to make the tool tray.
Excellent, I'm going to heckle.
Hi, I'm Jake, and this is going to save your fingers. So I'm sure you've all noticed that as you're pushing your timber through any kind of cast iron top, be it a cabinet saw, be it a joiner or planer, over time it will start to stick and drag. So the reason that is because over time material will build up there, be it wax, be it timber and dirt. What you want to do is try and clean that off and make sure it stops your timber from sticking. Because if your timber sticks, there's a good chance your fingers are going straight into your cutters. We can't have that. So that's where this comes in. So the idea is just something that's on hand that you've got around the workshop that you can apply just to get you back and going. We've got, beeswax sticks. You could probably grab a tea tree candle or any other alternative to, any kind of wax-based stick. This is how it's done. And that's it. I'm Jake, thanks for watching, and we'll now return you to your regularly scheduled program.
Okay, welcome back to the Tiny Workshop. While I think of it, and I failed to do this in the opening, and I'm going to be spanked for it tomorrow, we're running a survey on the Tiny Workshop. If you want to send us a message via the chat, we can send you a link to do the survey, give us some feedback on what we can do to improve the show and stuff. Otherwise, you can wait for your Timbecon email coming out on Friday. If you're not on our mailing list, join the mailing list. You can do the survey through the email tomorrow. What I'm going to do now is, or what we're going to do, because you're probably going to have to help me, is make this little tool tray using tape. Now, you would have seen the world's longest tape video. 4 minutes, Shelton. Should have been 2. Anyway.
Why are you using tape instead of clamps?
Oh, clamps are hard. As long as this isn't been done too badly, you can use, I think I illustrated it basically in the video, but if you can use tape to join before, so you can create a glue joint.
So right? This technique is specifically for miter joints, where you've got nice, clean miter cuts. And I remember when I first saw someone doing this on YouTube, I just thought it was so clever.
It's very dramatic, yeah?
Yeah.
But that's only if it works.
I'm sure it will.
So it'll be okay, I guess. Okay, so the first thing you do is I've cut these pieces of wood at a 45-degree miter. It's fully machined. They're nice and even, and you just push them right up hard against each other so the points of the miters are meeting. Then I'll use some of this blue tape and just tape across the back of it. Tape the whole surface. Don't just put one piece. You want it to be a really sturdy taped joint.
If you're concerned about it, you can also reinforce it, but this blue tape seems pretty tough.
No, this is good quality tape, this one. So I tape the whole thing out. This is the hard bit about this is actually having a bench long enough to do it in one fit. But we have my lovely assistant Patrick here to help, so we're okay. So let's flip this over. It's going to be okay.
Go towards you.
Yeah, all right. So once we've got that, you can see now how this naturally just wants to come together. So take this opportunity to get out your glue bot, and I'm just using a Tight Bond. I think this is the premium, which is too much glue. Okay. You don't need a huge amount, but you want a bit in there, if you know what I mean. A nice bit of squeeze out, and it's easier to get off afterwards.
Oh, we saw you doing it so effectively at the start of the episode.
I'm such a liar. I'll do it on this end here. Okay. Now, like everything else about this bench, if you want to come up first.
Sure.
Look at that.
Okay, there it is.
Go.
Coming towards you.
Yeah, okay. Oh, shit, sorry. So, excuse me.
There are kids watching, John.
Big
All the
kids.
woodworking kids.
All right, I need my glasses to do this.
I've got this.
All right, thank you. Just pull that up. Should have probably had some tape. And we just squeeze it in tight.
So with the tension that the tape creates on the back holds these joins in, as long as the miters are cut correctly, to form a really strong joint without using any clamps. And you can check that it's square, but in general, this should all work really, really well. If you've got big pieces that are being really stubborn, you could do a setup like this with the tape, and then you could use ratchet straps to really put some extra clamping pressure if you felt like those joins needed to be brought together a little bit tighter.
But if you need to tighten it up, I mean, this timber's a little bit, you know, it's a bit, it's construction pine, so it moves around a little bit. But a good way to get around squeezing that joint together is to lay your tape on and then actually squeeze it. You stretch the tape, and you can use this technique for doing almost anything. Where, for example, like say I wanted to put a solid edge onto this piece of wood.
Yeah, instead of running a bunch of tiny clamps over there.
No, just tape it on properly. And
Fantastic.
It'll do that quite well.
So are you going to rebate out a little a bottom for this, or how are you going to put a base on it?
Originally, in the bench I made the first time, I made this bench before, I had a rebate, a trench that I cut previously, and it was a solid timber base, so you need to let that base float. So it had to live inside a trench.
Sure.
On this job, we're just using a piece of plywood as the base, just to keep it simple.
And you're going to just glue that to the bottom of this.
Yeah, and I've got some really nice birch plywood over there, $200 a sheet that Hayes is going to be really happy about us using. So we'll do that next time, but I figured that because this timber is construction grade, you can use the plywood just to stiffen this up and keep it in shape. It'll keep the tool tray really neat.
If you just had a floating base in there, in theory it could just kind of wiggle around. The base isn't providing any bracing structure.
Do we have a tape measure somewhere? Has anyone got a tape measure? A workshop without a tape measure?
There's one.
Oh, okay. Now this is just a little trick. If you want to check something square, and this is a box. Like, you know, if we're all this tall, that could be like a really, you know, European style minimalist entertainment unit, but it's a box, yeah? So to check if something's square, just run a tape measure, or tape measuring tape, 12, 21, 15, miter to miter, and that'll tell you. We're at about 1 mil, so we need to just give it a squeeze. We might actually put some clamps on this later, just to help pull it into shape. So, ta-da!
Excellent, we're getting closer.
Yeah, oh well, we've started anyway.
Yeah.
So,
what are we up to next week?
next week we are going to, let's just check this, we're going to actually assemble the bench. We'll finish this up, we'll put the joints together, we'll bolt the whole thing together in real time. We'll get the top on using some hold down blocks that we're going to make. They're in the plans too if you're wondering what they are. And we will get a vise on it.
Excellent. You decided on your vise yet?
No. Well, it's actually not my bench. So if anyone's got any advice on some vices they'd like to see installed, keep it simple please, because you know it is 7 after 7.
We should raffle this off.
Yeah. Well, you never know. That's a good idea. All right. So a couple of things to talk about. We've got, if you want to do the survey, send us an email, visit the link, or join our mailing list, and you'll receive that. And if you want a set of plans for the bench, tiny workshop at timbecon.com.au. I think that we're good to go, yeah?
Fantastic. Well, guess I'll see you next week.
Man, it's going to be a busy week doing all that joinery, yeah?
I'm too busy, I can't help.
No, yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for watching the show. See you all next week.